Welcome to Businessworld series on the Sustainable Development Goals. We are very fortunate to have with us today Dr. Ajay Chhibber, the former Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations. We have 17 goals and 169 targets.
Right.
Is this realistic?
Well, we had a hard time monitoring the MDGs, and there were 8 goals and 21 targets. In the end, of course, they were quite successful, but now it's widened into 17 goals and 169 targets and covers any aspect of development, sustainable, inclusive, faster development, any aspect that you can think of. Personally, I think it's just too many, and I have recommended that there should be 60 high priority targets which all countries must try to monitor, follow, achieve. There can be another maybe 40 desirable targets, and then the rest I think would be a kind of more like a wish list of things that countries can pick and choose from.
Last year we saw 2 very important agreements globally. One, of course, was the SDGs, and the other one was climate change. And really, is the emphasis now on climate change going to put some of the goals in a collision course?
I mean, it could, but it need not. So I would say if the world follows common but differentiated responsibility, which means that the developed world is willing to give up some carbon space so that the low and middle income countries can grow faster and achieve some of their poverty reduction goals, but do it also in a cleaner manner than has been done in the past. If the Indias and the Chinas of the world can commit to that, Indonesia, Mexico and other middle income countries that still need to grow fast, but they will need the carbon space that the developed world must provide. For the very poorest set of countries, the LDCs, they should be allowed to grow at 7-8% unrestricted, because the total carbon emissions that they emit is only about 2% of the grand total. So they're not going to make a huge impact. So the choices, the trade-offs that have to be made should have to be made in the developed world by giving up carbon space, and in the middle income emerging economies who should then grow in a much cleaner manner. Then I think the trade-offs can be avoided. Of course, a lot will depend on technology also, and new technologies that we are not even yet fully aware of. A lot will also depend on being able to reduce the cost of renewable energy, particularly solar energy. If that can be reduced, I think that would make a huge impact also.
Going to another challenge that the SDGs face, which is financing.
Right.
What are your ideas on a global financial architecture that would allow for the financing of the SDGs?
So I think there's so much talk about money and finance, development finance. Total ODA today in the world is $135 billion. That's nothing, right? For any of the needs that we have. I mean, you need trillions for just infrastructure financing. So there's a lot of talk about money, but actually very little of it comes from international sources. And therefore, I think my sense is that relying on voluntary country contributions, we had this target of 0.7% of GNI. It's never been met. At best, we are today at about 0.2% of GNI or 0.25% of GNI as aid target, right? So my sense is that we need some more automatic mechanisms for raising finance for dealing with the SDGs. And my sense is more kind of globalized forms of finance are needed, like a Tobin tax or a carbon tax, or even the use of SDRs for financing the SDGs. But of course, all these issues are wrought with huge disagreements globally as well. So, but it's the only way to go, I think, if you really want to be able to finance them.
Is there any precedence for raising this kind of money globally for a particular issue? Can you think of?
I mean, if you think of, I mean, there are mechanisms that are being put in place, like the Green Climate Fund, for example. But the Green Climate Fund will need at least, over hundreds of billions of dollars. A slow start has been made. I think they have at best around $5 or $6 billion so far. So this kind of funds where you do voluntary contributions from countries to, pitch in, even though they may be making pledges, it may work, but I really have a hard time. But when you think of what do we do when we want to maintain roads? We have a road fund. Mm-hmm. Every vehicle pays a road fund, right? When you fly, every airline ticket has a little tax on it. So why not, if the big pollution is coming from airline flights and from shipping, and much of that is not taxed, simple polluter pay principle would say, put a little, automatic tax on all shipment and on all flights that goes into a green climate fund and puts the money in there for this kind of things. So I think we have a lot of examples where automatic fees are charged around the world, where people don't even think about it, that on my cell phone, like even Mr. Modi has put a Swachh Bharat cess, right? And well, for a while people sort of frowned on it, but now everybody thinks, well, it's not a bad idea, right? I wouldn't mind contributing to a Swachh Bharat if I could. Therefore I wouldn't mind contributing to a green earth if I could. Yes. So I think there might be some initial resistance, but if we could get everybody together to do it, I think it could work.
Bringing things a bit closer to home,
right.
What should India be thinking about in terms of domestic resource mobilization to fund the SDGs?
I think they've already made a bit of a start. I mean, there was a cess on coal. There's fuel tax, carbon tax. We have carbon tax. We've started down the road to carbon taxation, but we could go a lot more in that direction. We could start penalizing a lot of polluting industries. Of course, behind that is politics and jobs, so it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. But I think people will begin to realize that things like this are necessary, and we have to get it done. As I said, we already have the Swachh Bharat cess, so you could have a clean Ganga tax or something like that, and then people would, people have to get emotionally attached to an object, and then they will be ready to pay for it. But that's not the only way India can raise financing. I think infrastructure, green infrastructure, green bonds should be considered. It's not just taxation. I think people should be able to think of these as areas where the economy will grow and we will get returns on them as well. That's another way I think we have to go on financing. I don't think India can rely much on international finance, quite frankly. With all the talk in the world, it's not that the Indias of the world that are going to get the limited amount of international assistance that's going to go to the very poorest countries. So India will have to rely a lot on its own. The private sector, of course, could be rallied around various initiatives. And some of them may be quite profitable as well. I mean, behind solar energy, behind wind energy, behind hydropower, etc. There could be a lot of public-private partnerships that draw in private money into that as well. And that's the way I think we'll have to go.
We at BW Businessworld are committed to transforming this country through BW sustainability.
In 2015, 193 countries signed the SDGs. 17 goals: poverty, gender equality, climate action, zero hunger. 169 targets. Together we will achieve the 2030 agenda.